So we have an understanding of how these names, towns and buildings, are connected through the AI. There is a reoccurring fire theme. There are all these strange patterns, where we have hours and hours of documented evidence of this. We focus on the old world here, and the previous civilization, and the hidden coded messages within these false narratives, and it all translates into today's world. 100%. We know that the airports are so strange, and in my opinion, especially the big ones, they were previously there, and we have added on to them. We know that the Denver airport is strange in itself, said to have many buildings that are under the ground. And when we look at the O'Hare International Airport, and we have its location, and see the address, we find something very strange. Again, coded messages, even in addresses, for airports. Here we go. We see 10000 Bessie Coleman Drive, Chicago, Illinois, with a zip code of 60666. We have a lot of interesting things to look into today, including giants. And I sent out a poll on X, and you guys voted that you wanted me to talk more about orphans and go much, much deeper. Welcome to episode 52 of my lunch break. I hope you're all having a great day. And if you're new, welcome. And I want to thank all of our sponsors over on Patreon. Thank you to FlatEarthDave.com. You can check out his app. I'll put the link in the description, and you can use my referral code, MLB. The app is awesome. It shows a lot of videos that are really hard to find. They've got them all in great playlists. He also has my lunch break on the homeschool section of the app, which is really cool. Thank you for that. Thank you to Rebecca K., Don Gaston, Jason Brunson, Christopher Arietta, The Lady Lacey Show, Chuck Templeton, David and Sherry Ferguson, Edwin Johnson, Dale, DJ Clicktrack, Edward and Brianna, Edwin Rice, Joy Lee, Kyle Glasscock, Leslie Pipkins, PNR, Stephanie Nolan, The Burlesons, Two Spirit, Suez KC, Dan Woodle, Mike Latoris, Attila Power, Buck Suey, Corey Franks, Dakota Dunn, D-Rob 33, Jacob Law, Jim Ribley and Christine Duggan, Maddie B, Shiba Shaba in the Darkness, Spartan Oneg, Tim Rack, William Richard Jeffries V, and Zach Bronco. You guys are all awesome and helping this channel out a lot. We visited the Cahokia mounds, which is clearly a massive pyramid, right next to St. Louis. We have boots on the ground footage in episode 45, and I thought that we covered the best parts of that story until I found this article titled The Cahokia Mounds Complex, Ancient Open Air University of North America, for teaching navigation and cyclic astronomy. Here we go. We scroll down and find this paragraph. In the 1880s, archaeologists went into the site and found a vast amount of skeletal evidence in the mounds, sometimes in deep chambers far from the surface. They found very large individuals, achieving heights of 7 to 8 feet in stature. In a few instances, the skeletons had 6 fingers, 6 toes, and double rows of teeth. Where hair was still present, it was often red or blonde in color. All right, interesting. I don't remember being taught of the 6-fingered giants. Well, let's keep going. Here in the very next paragraph, I think we find which group is being controlled and being told to hide this information from us. I look at this group as a front. I think they're being told to do this by the hidden group, but let's see what happened here. And you, of course, can decide for yourself. John Wesley Powell lived with the Indians, and of course, became the first director of the U.S. Bureau of Ethnology at the Smithsonian Institute. Powell started deciding what we were going to learn, deciding that the Indians were the only people who had ever been in the Americas prior to Columbus. So, he tells us that the Indians were responsible for the Cahokia Mounds. Very interesting. And also, Columbus, in my opinion, was not a real character, and just another story where if you think he was good or bad, you are admitting that he was real, when in reality, he's a fictional character to attempt to set up their ridiculous timeline. Are you ready to go even deeper? We have fully documented, reliable accounts of the Smithsonian Institute personnel traveling to the 1800s communities in Middle America to take possession of large skeletons exhumed from the mounds, where they have this information documented in papers. Then we have Patricia Mason of Ohio reaching out to the Smithsonian Institute for more information to try to find these giant skeletons that were somehow gifted to this museum, or you could call it a burn pit, because they told Patricia that the Smithsonian Institute never received any of these items. So we clearly have an operation here. We are starting to see who is doing what. We are seeing key players in the game, and who is attempting to hide our past from us. At this point, there were 100% giants in my opinion. The doors that we've seen here are massive. They aren't for us. Buildings are way too big. They aren't proportionate to our size at all. And when you find this article from 1891, where it states that the old Catholic temple erected at Cahokia 120 years ago in 1771, which was 5 years before the USA was even found. It was abandoned as a church. The old temple has an interesting history. Well, I'm sure it does. A temple in Cahokia from 1771. And wait, what did they say was 24 inches under the dirt at Cahokia from episode 45? What appeared to be the outline of the temple. Was this temple and these giant bones here so much closer to our timeline than we are told, covered up by dirt at some point after 1891? They could be talking about another temple located in the same town of Cahokia. But how many temples does one small town have in 1771? This is all very strange. Either this is the temple, and it was built in 1771, and this was common knowledge, possibly by giants, or Cahokia was filled with temples. It's very interesting stuff. I mean, in 2023, almost 2024, how many temples does your town have? In 1771, I guess they just had a bunch of temples all over the place. What is going on here? Especially when St. Clair County, the county that Cahokia is located in, wasn't even found until April 27th, 1790, which is like 20 years after they say this temple was built. The mainstream history is a complete mess at this point. It isn't logical at all. The truth is smooth. It makes sense. There aren't holes in the truth. A lie is a mess and all over the place. And this is exactly why we fully trust the mainstream narrative. Oh wait, we don't? Now in Columbus, Ohio, we are given one of the most important narratives to this point, to our research, in my opinion. We have the Pontifical College, Josephinum, where Joseph comes over to the USA from Germany in 1867. 3 years later, he becomes a priest and has his own church within a few months. And he gets to buy the house next door, of course, to support 12 orphans. And do we all know about the orphans at this point? Possibly a repopulation tactic that was going on in the 1800s. It's very interesting. Was it only 12 orphans? Or was this one of the places that they would send the orphans through to get them into society? Because who would ever question Joseph the priest from the 1800s? You know, the guy that just randomly shows up from Germany, has all the money ready to buy houses somehow, to support orphans. It all checks out, of course. Simple stuff for Joseph. This was known as the St. Joseph Orphan Asylum. It grew so rapidly, for some weird and of course very random reason, that 5 years after it began, Joseph moved the operation closer to the railroad, which is how these individuals would be dispersed throughout the country. So this is a paragraph of admission. We are being told, down to the smallest detail, how this operation worked. It would go through churches. They would bring a manager type over from Europe, call them a priest, give them a house, give them the resources to run these operations, purchasing new buildings with ease to run the program. So not only do you have the World's Fairs that were a repopulation tactic, you had these orphan trains and orphan hubs where they would be dropped off and planted into society. The new facility that Joseph was just finding and saying was his. I want to make that clear, he wasn't building anything. He was given these buildings that were already there from the previous civilization. So the new building gave the orphans a training in the trades. So this Joseph guy was obviously sent with a purpose, to repopulate and teach to a brand new society, one that didn't have any skills. This right here is how you reset a society's technology level. The teacher is never in charge of what the students learn. This Joseph character is a teacher of a class. He is not the principal of the school. There are many schools. He is clearly taking direction as to what the students of the new society will learn. There were many classes like this one all over the country, happening simultaneously. This was an operation. This went on for 12 years. With zero backstory, finds the Collegium Josephinum, this massive college, is just found and ready to roll. No clue where the money came from. No mention of how many men were needed to build this place. Just found it. And its first class of 23 men began. It's unbelievable. This is one of the most important stories to our research, in my opinion, because it shows exactly how the operation took place. It's actually laying it all out there and shows us exactly how they repopulated these regions in the USA. It shows us the operation with the orphans, the teaching programs, and this was our base for our technological knowledge. Whoever controlled this operation from the top has all of the technology from the previous civilization and is controlling what technology we get to have. And they've clearly been doing this for a very long time. And for anyone that's on the fence, we have the St. Vincent's Infant Asylum, located in Baltimore, where we have tunnels under the ground. This infant asylum was in use in the mid-1800s, during the same time period as German transferred Joseph. And what do you know? In the early 1900s, the operation was done, and they declined new orphans. 1941, they changed this to apartments. And in 2015, they light it up and try to destroy it with a fire, but they fail. So 3 years later, what do you think happens? 2018, the building was illegally demolished without a permit. You literally can't make this stuff up. It gets more and more obvious. If you're still on the fence, let's go even deeper. We have the St. Mary's Orphan Asylum, located in Galveston, Texas, where they tell us that this one is haunted. Now, I've talked about hauntings before briefly. I'm not going to say that there aren't any hauntings, but when it comes to these old world buildings, I think it was a tactic to keep people away from them. Just say that they're haunted, and it scares everyone away from investigating. So we have yet again another orphan operation going on in the mid-1800s. And I'm just going to let you know that this is going on and on and on. There were so many orphan operations going on in the mid-1800s because this was how they were repopulating these cities. So where were all these kids' parents? Is this where a lot of our families originated from? Is this why the family trees in the USA almost all end around the same time period? We are told hundreds of fire stories through the first 52 episodes. We know that that is the key and the nod that it's a building that was constructed by the previous civilization. The St. Mary's Orphan Asylum. For anyone wondering where the parents of these orphans were, you might want to check the other asylum, the Insane Asylum, because they were not going along with the reset. Here's a graph showing that the insane asylums are disappearing over time, and I wonder why. Good thing they cared so much about us in 1955 and 1965, because surely that was the fix. Oh, it wasn't? And then a fire had devastated the St. Mary's Orphan Asylum in 1875. If anyone is still on the fence, there is room over here to get off the fence. And honestly, who would want to sit on top of a fence anyway? So we have Ohio, Baltimore, Texas. We have all these towns and cities being repopulated. Brand new people, brand new social structures, brand new mindsets, and resetting what people are taught. This all happened around 150 years ago. So this is all very new. This isn't thousands of years ago. Then we have another very interesting aspect of this in Germany during this same exact time period. And remember, we also have good old Joseph from earlier, also from Germany. So here we are given the Kinderbewahrenstalt. And if I pronounce that wrong, I hope you all understand. This is where we are given kindergarten, another tactic to teach children the brand new social structures. What better way to trick people? Take them out of their family's home and tell them what to think, and then test them on it. Failing the test will then lower your self-esteem, putting a social pressure on children to agree with this new way of thought, or they will be called dumb and get an F. This is an operation. It's all connected, and it's designed to enslave the world's population year after year. We are all taught a false narrative. We've all been brainwashed into thinking that you are either smart or dumb based on a curriculum that holds zero value in the real world. Now, who knows if this Frederick Froebel was even a real character, but they do admit that kindergarten starts in Germany around the exact same time period that we're talking about, the mid-1800s. So I wanted to tie it all in with the rest of the world. This is a worldwide operation. This is not just the USA. We have a lot of things in the USA being controlled through Germany during this time period, especially the education aspect of it. And I want to point out that yes, we have borders and division now. We have so many countries in the world, and everyone is separated. And you're unable to travel to other lands unless you have a piece of paper that is registered and checked at the checkpoints. But who's to say that there even was a border in the previous civilization? Were there so-called elected leaders controlling everyone, deciding what we can and cannot do? Could they have had a truly free life where they were able to travel wherever they want freely and not feel like they're invading someone else's territory? I would say, in my opinion, this was the world that was here before the reset. And something happened where this past civilization was wiped out and their technology was stolen by a group. And some of it is now being sold back to us. Strategically, the good stuff is kept to control the masses and used for their benefit. Before we get into the final part that's going to expose a lot, I want to thank all the badge members and the Patreons and subscribers. You are all helping this channel out a lot and keeping it going. We have a lot more to share. I look forward to every Saturday, hearing all of your thoughts in the comments below. Here we have the St. Joseph's Orphanage, located in Vermont. And if you want to know where they get these horror movies, where they show a nun doing crazy things, there's a dark truth to it. These movies don't come out of nowhere. They come from the last 150 years. Here in Vermont, in the mid-1800s again, thousands of children came through its doors. If you want to demoralize, control, and manipulate a new population, make them completely forget their past and never question what they're told, you would make them suffer. You would take them from their families, and you would ruin their mind at a young age. This is exactly what happened in the wars, where all men between ages 21 to 45 were required to fight in World War I, which was in 1914 to 1919. 2.8 million men drafted, 2 million volunteered, where you get the term shell-shocked or mentally confused. You can look at the shell-shock videos on X. I'm not going to show that here. But talk about destroying minds and making sure that the population is unable to focus on finding the truth. So we have millions of people in wars. We have more than 5 million American children passing through the orphanage system in the 1900s alone, hitting its peak in the early 1900s. So it began in the mid-1800s and really ramped up to populate these cities. The American orphanage system included more than 1,600 institutions, partly supported by public funding, but usually run by religious orders, exactly like we talked about in the beginning of this episode. So I think we have now a very solid understanding how the USA was repopulated, how this operation took place, and exactly when it took place. I think that we now have factual evidence as to when this reset really happened. And I think that every episode that is released makes episode 10 and 38 stronger and stronger, giving us more and more proof to our true history.